Guys, it's Mr. Sisson. We're in the thick of our unit on the Great Depression. And so hopefully you've had a chance to do the chapter readings already in the American Yacht. And what I want to do now is dig into some primary sources that are also available on the American Yacht. One of them is the Herbert Hoover speech from 1932, and then another one is the FDR speech, Franklin Roosevelt speech from 1936. So I want to just model what it looks like to dig in and analyze those primary sources, how to watch for clues and arguments that are being made by them in the midst of those speeches. So I've got my hat on backwards. I haven't shaved. I'm ready to let loose and do some primary source analysis. Make sure you've got something to record notes on that's handy. The speech will be in front of you, but make sure you've got something to record the thoughts that we bring up somewhere. All right. Hey, guys. So we're going to start with Herbert Hoover's speech from 1932. Before we get into it, this may be obvious to most of you guys, but I want to make sure that before we start reading speeches like this, that we look for some of the clues that are just right there for us. So some of the ones that are just given to us, sorry, I just marked on it, from the outset. So one of the things that's going to be important for us to realize is the year, which is 1932. We'll get a little bit more context if we read this little introduction down here. So we've got Herbert Hoover speaking in the year 1932 on the New Deal. And before we go any further, to make sure we're all on the same page, what that means is Herbert Hoover is about to comment on FDR's plan for, we'll just say, fixing the Great Depression. That's stupid. Fixing the economy during the Great Depression. So that's what we're about to get into. So here's our intro. Hopefully we can find some things in here that'll help us get started too. At least give us a foundation to work from. So Americans elected a string of conservative Republicans to the presidency during the boom years of the 1920s. When the economy crashed in 1929, so most of us seem to at least know about that, the stock market crashed in 1929. However, and the nation descended deeper into the Great Depression, voters abandoned the Republican Party and conservative politicians struggled to, it looks like there's a typo there, struggled to probably get elected or struggled in office, I'm not sure. I guess it'd be struggled in office. In this speech on the eve of the 1932 election, so that's going to be important, really what that tells me is this is kind of like a campaign speech. Like Hoover's trying to get reelected. Herbert Hoover warned against Franklin Roosevelt's proposed New Deal. So if you want to put it in perspective, this is going to be like that moment where one candidate is like, let me tell you why this guy is going to be a problem. This is what Herbert Hoover telling us why Franklin Roosevelt's plan to fix the economy in the Great Depression was a bad idea. All right, so we get past the italics. Now we're into Hoover's actual words. Hoover says, "This campaign is more than a contest between two men. It is more than a contest between two parties. It is a contest between two philosophies of government." And this is going to get unpacked a little bit more as we go. But just so we know, like, really what Hoover is saying then is, what is the role of government? So if you wanted to go really back far to, say, the Declaration of Independence, Declaration of Independence said life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness are important. I'm not going to have enough room. You guys probably already realized that. But you also can go even further back to at least John Locke, as far back as I can think, that the purpose of government is to keep people secure in their property. That whatever you have, the government's role should be able to make sure that you keep it. So your home and your money and those types of things, that a government's role is to make sure that they can protect property. So we are told by the opposition that we must have a change, that we must have a new deal. It is not the change that comes from normal development of national life, to which I object, but the proposal to alter the whole foundations of our national life, which have been builded through generations of testing and struggle. So essentially, he's saying Americans have always persevered. Like, life is a struggle, and that's how we've gotten where we are. and the principles upon which we have builded the nation. The expressions our opponents use must refer to important changes in our economic and social system and our system of government. Otherwise, they are nothing but vacuous words. Okay, so you guys probably already know this. Vacuous, another word for empty. Some people could say during campaigns there's a lot of empty words that you hear from politicians, but essentially what Hoover's saying is if Roosevelt's plan isn't going to change the economic, social, and social systems and the system of government, so really you could say political, I guess, maybe, then they don't mean anything. That doesn't mean that Hoover supports that. He's just saying what Roosevelt is talking about is really drastic change. And I realize that in this time of distress, many of our people are asking whether our social and economic system is incapable of that great primary function of providing security and comfort of life to all of the firesides of our 25 million homes in America. So what he's saying is, remember, if the role of government is to keep people secure in their property, can U.S. actually do that? Because if it can't, then those changes need to happen, right? If it still can, if you still believe in the American system of government, then why go through all these crazy, crazy changes that Hoover says Roosevelt wants to institute? Whether our social system provides for the fundamental development and progress of our people, whether our form of government capable of originating and sustaining that security and progress. Essentially, who knows where Hoover's going to go with it? This is a campaign speech, but really, these are the questions I think he's answering. And if we're being honest, we know a little bit about Hoover already. He's a Republican at this time. His opponent is FDR, who's in favor, or at least in Hoover's mind, is in favor of drastic changes. So we probably have some idea that Hoover is going to say, hey, you know what? These big questions, can our social system provide for fundamental development of progress and progress of our people? Is it able to sustain or continue security and progress? I have a feeling that Hoover is going to say, yes, it's still capable of that. All right, moving on. This question is the basis upon which our opponents are appealing to the people in their fears and distress. They are proposing changes in so-called New Deals which would destroy the very foundation of our American system. I would expect Hoover to elaborate on this someplace. And as the reader, you might say, okay, what are those foundations? He mentioned something earlier about struggle. And so maybe that's still part of what it is, that Americans are like, they carry their own weight. They take care of themselves. Maybe that's what it is. But what he's saying is that Roosevelt's plan is going to destroy the foundation of the American system. Our people should consider the primary facts before they come to judgment, not merely through political agitation, the glitter of promise, and the discouragement of temporary hardships. Whether they will support changes which radically affect the whole system, which has been builded up by 150. Isn't it weird that he keeps saying builded? I guess it must have been like proper use at the time. I don't know. It looks weird though. By 150 years of the toil of our fathers. So look at these words that he keeps using: toil, struggle, temporary hardships. Those are important words because he's building. He's building a picture of what's happening at the time. They should not approach the question in the despair with which our opponents would clothe it. So what he's saying, opponents are clothing the whole situation in despair. And then the other thing that you might notice at the beginning of this is that, where was that? Hold on. Yeah, here we go. Up here, he said fear. What he's trying to do is he's trying to characterize the other side as, I'm going to say FDR appealing to fears and despair. What Hoover's trying to say is it's a temporary hardship, and Americans have always had to work through these things. The toil, this word right there, toil. I mean, there's always been struggle in American history, and so you don't upend the whole system to fix a temporary problem. Our economic system has received abnormal shocks during the past 3 years. Some people could say, well, that's an understatement. It's the Great Depression, man, which temporarily dislocated its normal functioning. These shocks have, in a large sense, come from without our borders. This is interesting. I don't know much about this, but he seems to be blaming the Great Depression on global factors. I'm going to put a question mark. I don't know much about that. That might make your, your question bubble pop up above your head. Like, I don't know if that's a thing. But it's come from without our borders, so it's not necessarily our fault, is what I would read that as, especially from a political perspective. But I say to you that our system of government has enabled us to take such strong action as to prevent the disaster which would otherwise have come to our nation. It has enabled us further to develop measures and programs which are now demonstrating their ability to bring restoration and progress. If you're wondering what he's saying here, he's saying Great Depression could have been worse. And then, in much more simple terms, hey, we're doing stuff. I'm not inactive here. Like, we're fixing things. We're doing, there are new programs. We're instituting new measures. And they're working. They're bringing about restoration and progress. Say it's working. I may say at once that changes proposed from all these democratic principles and allies are of the most profound and penetrating character. If they are brought about, this will not be the America which we have known in the past. I always think this is interesting because this is something you hear all the time. America's dead. It's not what it used to be. They were saying those things in 1932 the same way people are saying those things now in 2020. The question really should be, well, what is that? What is America? And you might find a bunch of different answers for people. But what he's saying is, if Roosevelt's elected and he's able to do the things that he wants to do, then America as we've known it is going to cease to exist. Let us pause for a moment and examine the American system of government, of social and economic life, which is now proposed that we should alter. Good. We're finally getting into some substance. Our system is the product of our race and of our experience in building a nation to heights unparalleled in the whole history of the world. It is a system peculiar to the American people. It differs essentially from all others in the world. It is an American system. So maybe you might be asking, okay, how? How is it different? Enlighten us. It is founded on the conception that only through ordered liberty, through freedom to the individual, and equal opportunity to the individual, will his initiative and enterprise be summoned to spur the march of progress. This is going to be two important things here. Like liberty, that you've provided freedom to individuals. Where was that? Freedom to the individual is necessary, but also that you have found some way to harness individual initiative and enterprise. Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm spelling initiative right. I'm sure I didn't. What that means is we need these individuals to be motivated, to work hard, to actually put forth a lot of effort, to work hard, to create, to be productive. And that's what initiative is, even though you can't read that at all. And so we have to have both those things. We have to have liberty, and we have to be able to motivate people, make sure that they feel like their hard work is going to be worth it. The implacable march of scientific discovery with its train of new inventions presents every year new problems to government and new problems to the social order. That's interesting. We'll have to see what he means by that. I'm going to put a big question mark. Questions arise whether, in the face of the growth of these new and gigantic tools, democracy can remain master in its own house, can preserve the fundamentals of our American system. I contend that it can, and I contend that this American system of ours has demonstrated its validity and superiority over any other system yet invented by human mind. So I think it's important to note here that Hoover, at least, is still optimistic, right? He's saying democracy can work, even in the midst of the Great Depression. I still think that this system, as we have it, can work. I'm sure there were some people at the time who were like, dude, you're crazy. But that's important. It is demonstrated in the face of the greatest test of our history. That is the emergency which we have faced in the past 3 years. This is really interesting. He's saying the Great Depression is the greatest test of our history. Well, so he's not minimizing the Great Depression. He understands that it's a significant challenge. I therefore contend that the problem of today is to continue measures and policies to restore this American system to its normal functioning, to repair the wounds it has received. What are the wounds? To correct the weaknesses and evils which would defeat the system. What are those? Should be a lot of questions. To enter upon a series of deep changes, to embark upon, here's a word that I don't know. That's embarrassing. I don't know what in chote means. Let's see if we can figure it out. To enter upon a series of deep changes to embark upon this in chote New Deal which has been propounded in this campaign. Okay. I'm going to use context clues. I think in chote means bad. I hope I'm right. We'll find out. Which has been propounded in this campaign would be to undermine and destroy our American system. Okay. So, this is Hoover. If you're looking for a summary of this, let's do something out here. We'll say democracy can still function in face of challenges. Be patient. We are tough. Struggle. Am I talking in a weird voice? Is part of life. The last thing, one of those last points he made, maintain liberty and individual initiative. All right, so that's Hoover. We're going to go ahead and stop there. I'm going to do another one on FDR. I thought I would do it on this same video, but this is getting a little bit long. So that is Hoover. Hopefully that helps. And if you get a chance to watch the FDR one, you'll be able to have something to compare it to so you can see the two sides of the same argument. Thanks, guys.